Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LFC Transfer Room live stream with myself, Carter, Anil, and Tom. Thank you so much for joining us on this, shall we call it an uneventful Monday, if you want to put that sort of a word onto it. All has come out today. All the shit has hit the fan today. It's a great stream. It's a great stream to be on if you're on for today, because boy, does the news really come out. Yes, GMUs were late, but we wanted to make sure that we had everybody on and make sure that we had all the news going forward. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure to have your notifications on for all future streams and videos so that you never miss out on any future streams or videos as well. Jamie was mentioning how ironic it is he refed our match yesterday. I think it was Saturday. And then this, I'm not a conspiracy person, but we all knew something smelled. Yeah, we said it before we even came live, Jamie, is that this is just confirming what we all knew for the past 4 fucking years. And then where are we here? Just Coote suspended for the season, at least in my opinion. There can be no corruption in refereeing. Let's move on and win trophies. I don't think he's only going to be done for the season. I think he is done for his career. Simple as that. I don't think he's done just for the year, JMUs. But appreciate that. Wilson, left back found. Yeah, we'll get into that. It's Milos Kerkez. So with Bournemouth, apparently Liverpool are looking into him. Daily Mail reported that. And Comey, hello, how are you? And we're going to go down. Yes, Nix, the streets are buzzing. Yes. I didn't believe it either. I thought the video was fake. And then I watched it a couple of times. And yes, David Coote is a rat bastard. But again, it's something that we've all known for years. Tom, I'll throw it over to you first on this, purely because, like, realistically, what more needs to be said about it at this point? Geez, we're losing everybody. What more needs to be said about it at this point in relation to David Coote? Like, if you needed any more proof of evidence of what was going on here, we seen at the weekend where Mo Salah just gets bowled over by an Aston Villa defender. I think it was Leon Bailey that was doing it at the time. I don't know if it was Konza or somebody else, but I think it was Leon Bailey. And just, you've seen on the replay, David Coote waved no foul, and only for Darwin Núñez scored. Like, what the fuck? Like, how are you even shocked or even remotely surprised by this news?
I think this is the worst thing. I'm not remotely surprised. Just like you said, confirm what we all knew. You know, if you think there's no corruption or bias in the Premier League, I don't know what to tell you, because, yeah, we've been seeing it going on for years. You know, the Howard Webb days, Man United, all the decisions Man City have had the last few years. And it's not just that. You know, the likes of David Coote with us and other certain refs with certain clubs. It's just, yeah, it's just been obvious for years. We all know there's no way that all these refs, they're not supporting like Kidderminster Harriers, are they? They're all supporting the Premier League team. We all know that. So you're obviously going to have a conscious or unconscious bias. So yeah, it's not surprising. And you know, there's a Facebook picture of David Coote, isn't there, outside Old Trafford as his profile picture. So if you didn't believe that, then you probably believe that now as well. So yeah, it just shows what the state of the PGMOL really. I think, you know, you don't like to see anyone lose their job, but I think in this situation he has to. I don't think Howard Webb will. I don't think the PGMOL or Howard Webb have the balls to do the right thing, but we'll see. Like I said, I don't like to see people lose their job, but in this situation, he has to, because it just, the precedent it sets if he keeps his job in this is just what kind of precedent does that set? So yeah, it doesn't surprise me whatsoever. Yeah, never liked him as a referee. Think he's very weak. You can just see by like when people crowd him, he gets overawed. Yeah, got no bottle about him. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me in the slightest, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he's really not going to be much of a loss for us, Carter. Like, as Tom mentioned, he doesn't have much of a great refereeing resume, shall we call it. But like, you've seen the video, we've all seen the video. Nix, I haven't a clue how old the video is. My guess is it's a couple of years old, but David Coote has been reffing us since 2020, and I think we've had 30 games with him. We've won 15, lost 5, drawn 4, something like that, or something along the lines of that. Or it's one, we've had 20 games or something like that with him in the past 4 years. We've won half of them, but lost or drawn the other half, and that's utterly astounding. And the amount of decisions as well that have gone other teams' ways rather than our own shall we say, when the correct decision should have been made. There's been multiple instances of it, and we'll get into those instances now. But Carter, I'd ask the same question to Tom, but I'm sure it's going to be the exact same answer. Are you even remotely surprised at this point?
To be honest, I'm not surprised. Like, all referees, all players are going to speak about referees. Like, there's always people going to talk. I just think to let someone film you in that situation, like, and obviously he's definitely got a bias. And you look in all sports, there's referees with like bias. Like, if anyone watches the NBA, there's like Scott Foster and Chris Paul. Like, I think he had like 10 games refereed by him and he lost all 10. And it's some people just don't get on. And it's, for me, I think he maybe said a German and then a nasty word. I think I don't really have, as long as if they can prove, like, I obviously don't think he's had much integrity, maybe is the best way to say it. I do think there's been a lot of times we look at a lot of the calls and go, oof, oof, oof. These probably, most people would have given them the other way. So I feel like if he'd have been fine, like if it had come out about a more neutral referee, I actually don't think any of us would be that fussed. No. But I think we're all quite level-headed. Like, if you just go, oh, I didn't like the way Klopp spoke to me, I think he's a dick. Like, I don't care. Like, that's your opinion. But the fact that most people have thought for ages, he's quite a harsh ref to us. Like, he tends to lean the other way. I think that it's probably the worst possible thing that could happen for him. So I think it's difficult. And I've refereed up to sort of under 16, under 17 level. And I think as someone who's refereed, I think the best way you can look at someone is that you don't really notice them, or you only notice them very briefly. Like, they sort of let it go, but when things need to be done, they're done, and you can't really remember much of what they've done. Probably is a good way. I think is always better. Like, they've got to be more on sort of manage the game a bit better. But with him, he always seems to be in the middle of something, whether it's an argument at the end or if it's a player getting in his face saying, how has this happened? Like, you always remember, like, why did this happen? Like, you've always got loads of things in your head after the game. So I just think probably not the best referee, and he's probably not the referee with the most integrity probably as well.
Yeah, and to your point of the referee needs to be invisible but there. I'll give you the contrast of, and the only reason I know his name is because one of the guys mentioned it earlier, the referee that officiated the Leverkusen game, possibly one of the best officiated games. And people might say, oh, it's because we won the game 4-0. I genuinely was very happy with the way he refereed it. He allowed the game to be physical. He allowed play to continue. He allowed players to be players and battle for the ball and be physical. And there's nothing from that game that you could point out that he got overtly wrong. And if he did, he got it wrong for both teams, where there's a level of consistency there at least, and that wasn't by the letter of the law for both teams, not because it was only by the letter of the law for one team, which seems to be the case. Whereas we know David Coote, and I didn't know the name of that referee, Makaleli, I believe is his name. I didn't know the name of that referee of the Leverkusen game until it was told to me today. And that's the point that you're trying to make, Carter, of be invisible but be there. If we know the names of these refs, Paul Tierney, David Coote, Howard Webb, if we're aware of these refs because they're so infamous in the games that they play, then clearly they're not refereeing the game correctly, because the referee should not be as notable or as infamous or as famous as they are. And as you mentioned, he gets involved in everything. He has no bottle. He's just genuinely possibly one of the worst referees that I've seen. And that decision at the weekend was possibly one of the worst ones that I've seen in relation to Salah just getting bowled over and Coote waving it off. I'm like, you're 12 yards away from it. How are you waving that off? Like, only for the grace of God that Darwin went and pinged it over the top of Martinez that we forget about it. But that was a red card decision, essentially. Anil, are you even remotely surprised by this? We always had this feeling, and as Carter mentioned, if it was a more level-headed referee, or even if it was a different referee that just wasn't as biased as Coote seems to be, and he said those things like, look, I just don't like Klopp because of the way he spoke to me, you'd understand that. But it's the level of contempt that he seems to have for us, both in games directly involving us and games indirectly involving us, such as if he was managing City or if he was managing, or not managing City, if he was reffing City or a different side, there's been multiple occasions where he's either directly or indirectly influenced us, and he's clearly knowledgeable about where we are and what those decisions would be. Are you even remotely surprised by this based on what he is like as a ref and decisions we've seen over the past 4 years?
I'm not surprised at all, because it's not as if it's just a one-off or like one or two incidents. There've been a lot of incidents over the last couple of years. So even when we just see, like, let's say the game coming up on the weekend and we know David Coote, the referee, instantly we're like, oh, fuck's sake, man, why is he refereeing that game? So it's not ideal, is it? And I think this thing that come out now it's not gonna it just basically exposes him and just justifies what we all already felt as Liverpool fans. So it's not good. And what you're saying about the foreign referees, that's exactly how it should be. We shouldn't be knowing their names, because they're here to do a job. We shouldn't be knowing all the referees and VAR officials' names, and so they should be doing a good job, and we all recognise them. But in the Premier League, too many occasions happen where there's referees that like mess a team up, fuck a team over because of decisions they made, and I just think personally we're better off just having foreign referees, because at least then we know there's not going to be any kind of bias. So you just know that if they make a mistake, it's probably just because they made a mistake, and you wouldn't think, oh, he might have made them, he might have done this because he didn't like this team or whatever. So it's not good, and the Premier League need to completely exclude him now, because especially after what has come out, and we've seen what happened on Saturday, where when Salah, got fouled, and the commentator said something like, I think he didn't put his flag up. I hope it's just like a mistake or something. But we know that he probably did it on purpose now because of what come out. So that's the problem. So yeah, I'm kind of happy in the way it came out, because it kind of justified what we all knew anyway.
Yeah, it really did. And not alone the Salah decision. There was multiple other decisions in that game. Like the Ollie Watkins dive. But he called it as a free kick, or did he call it as a goal kick? If you were watching the TNT broadcast, even the commentators were utterly befuddled as to what the decisions were being given for. That one with Ollie Watkins' dive, it was given as a free kick to Liverpool. But the commentators thought it was being given as a goal kick because it just went out, and he just called it as a goal kick. But no, he called it back for the free kick. Okay, but if it's a free kick then and it's a dive in the box, shouldn't that have been a yellow card for simulation? But then that wasn't given. And then the commentators were just like, I haven't a clue what he's doing. And like when the commentators that are meant to be analysts in this game are looking at your refereeing performance and are just gobsmacked by what you're doing on the pitch, then it's like leave the football before the football leaves you, as Jamie Carragher said. Like that's the way that it is. Jamie was mentioning here that refereeing is an incredibly hard job. It is. Nobody's questioning that. Refereeing is an incredibly hard job, and it's a thankless job, and it's one of the most abused jobs in the world. And I know people might scoff at that, but if you've ever been to an underage game where parents get involved, and Carter, I'm sure you've seen it, Tom, I'm sure you've seen it, and Neil, I'm sure you've seen it, and people have probably seen it at home as well. I've seen it personally. People just lose the run of themselves, and all of a sudden this referee that's getting paid 20 quid to be there and referee an underage game is getting called every name under the sun just because he didn't give my precious little angel a penalty. Like, nobody's disputing that whatsoever. But when you're this incredibly bad at your job, any other profession, you would be fired. And that's just as simple as it is. When you're consistently making these mistakes on a regular basis, you will be let go from your job. If any of us went into work over the next 3 months and made the exact same amount of errors that David Coote has made over the last number of months and number of years, we'd all be unemployed. It is unfortunately that simple. And that's just the long and the short of it, unfortunately, Jamie. I know you mentioned here that you don't like cancel culture or anything, but you see our side of it as well. That's essentially it. Like, it's, and to Anil's point of bringing in foreign referees, I genuinely think that a rule should be brought in across UEFA, and I think UEFA might bring this in now because of all the shit that's happened with the PGMOL, and they want a little bit more control of the Premier League, and this might be how they get it. You can't referee in your country of origin. So if you're an English referee, you can't ref in England. You got to go into the continent. And if you're a German referee, you can't ref in Germany. You have to go to Italy, Spain, Portugal, England, so on and so forth, the whole way around. That would possibly be the easiest way to eliminate as much bias as possible. Because realistically, how much bias is David Coote going to have against Bayern Munich? How much bias is he going to have against the likes of Inter Milan or AC Milan or Juventus? He still might be shit, but he's not going to have an inherent bias to automatically in his head make a decision and not go with it. But I think that this is going to be absolutely massive, and it's really going to send reverberations through the PGMOL. I think this is the beginning of the end of the PGMOL, and I think that you can see big changes going to come. Liverpool haven't made a comment yet on it. They said they're waiting until the investigation by the PGMOL is done, but there have been multiple decisions made by David Coote over the years that have influenced the future of Liverpool Football Club. Virgil van Dijk missed 18 months worth of football because of it, one of his decisions, and no foul was even called on Pickford in that, and that's probably the most unforgivable one. There was obviously images recirculating of the Rodri handball, but that wasn't him. He wasn't in that game, so that wasn't James. I think Klopp's at home laughing his ass off. I reckon he is. And do you want to know as well? I reckon he's fuming. I reckon he's absolutely fuming. He left this season. City have lost 4 games in a row for the first time in God knows how long. Arsenal have decided to capitulate and fall apart. And now all of a sudden we're just sat at the top of the Premier League and the top of the Champions League in the new format. I guarantee you, Jurgen Klopp's at home. I was sitting in one of them Red Bull offices fuming that he left. But to be honest, I think it was time for a refresh. Regardless, it was nearly a decade. You can see that the players are re-energized. I think if they were to go into it again under Klopp, I don't think we would have seen the start that we did see. And that's just the way that I think it is. But we're going to move on now to a couple of other topics. But before we do that, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure you have your notifications on for all future streams and videos so that you never miss out. We are live every day from 7:30 p.m. UK time, and we will be live again from tomorrow from 7:30 p.m. JMUs, I'll throw this question to the panel as well and everything else before jumping on to the next topic. Is the panel and the chat feeling something special now? I'm assuming you mean in relation to this season. Myself, I don't want to get too Arsenal about it, shall we say, and count my chickens before they're hatched. But you can clearly feel something's different this season. Anil, how are you feeling so far this season? Does it feel different? Does it almost feel like it's written, but you don't want to admit it yet?
I think it's just going too perfect. Like, not even just for us, just the way the results are going, the City injuries, the injuries that Arsenal have been having. Even though they don't have as many injuries they claim to have. But it's going really well. I'm very happy the start we're having. We're top of the Champions League group, top of the league, 5 point clear of Man City. Couldn't go any better. But it's important to note as well, it's still a long way to go in the season. So many things can happen. But we just got to take it one game at a time. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm someone that keeps looking at the fixture list like constantly, just seeing who we got next in this game, who's Man City got next, who's Arsenal got next. But we have to keep looking at it, just the next game that's coming up, and focus on that. I'm really happy. I think everything's going well. I think slots, obviously him coming in was a great refresher. But we also had good luck coming our way as well with other teams. So very happy. But I'm trying not to get overexcited. But it's an amazing feeling being top of the league. Everybody would love to be in our situation, wouldn't they?
Yeah, that's exactly. It's as you said. It's maybe it's because of previous years we're kind of waiting for the penny to drop. For me, was it the Villa game, or it was I think it was the Villa game where Konate went up for the header, and he came down a little bit awkwardly on his right leg, and then he was slow to get up, and I was like, oh, that's his fucking ACL gone. Here's where it starts. Here's where the downhill goes. But he got up and he walked off, and I was like, oh, thank God. Carter, Jimmy thinks you're a little bit of a superstitious person. Would he be right in saying that? Do you think it's written in the stars, or are you still very cautious so far?
I think for me, I think we've been in sort of firsts and we've been in title races before and we've come really close. So for me, I think the one that would sort of solidify it would be sort of Gravenberch competition cover. I think if we got that, I think it would fill out the squad and I'd be a lot less worried about sort of burnout, especially with Chiesa, or Chiesa, however I'm supposed to say it. I think with him now, just an extra body, I feel like we have got more than we got last year. I think everyone's had a bit more experience together. Like, I think a big thing is just playing together. Like, if you look at, I think a good example is Bournemouth. I think if you look at the start of last season, how bad they were, and now all these players have gelled and they look like a really good sort of formidable team who can beat anyone. We had the same with our midfield, like Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai. Even if we put Jones, who's played a lot of games, he barely played with these guys. Elliott barely played with these guys. They've now actually got sort of 30, 40, 50, 60 maybe games now in all comps, friendlies together. So I think people kind of underrated how much of a difference that would make, just having relationships. Like, we saw how good that was for us. And I think for me, the big one is Jan. And I also think it's just, and I know they're not good, but I think it's beating City. Like, we've got a good run of games. We've got a few games at home. I think once we sort of put 15, if we can put 15 points, I'd be very confident. But, and we've got the opportunity to do that. Like, teams are weak. Like, I think the level of the Premier League, it kind of suits us. Like, I think teams like Wolves and stuff, I know they scored against us, but I feel like City and Arsenal can defend them less well than we can in transition. So I'm really excited for our season this season. And I think, yeah, we've got a real chance. And it does kind of remind me of the year we won the league, in the sense of we are just putting points and points and points and points. And we do look really good. And the main thing is we're the best statistically, apart from if you count the 11 versus 11 statistics. I think we're the best defense in the league. So we were when we won the league. So I think for me, it's all kind of ticking. And yeah, I'm feeling very confident. I don't think it's set yet, but I'm feeling very confident.
Yeah, like the way that I look at it is, talk to us in March. Like, it's one thing to say it now, but like Tom, myself and yourself were chatting about it a couple of days ago in relation to Arsenal and kind of how they've capitulated and sort of self-imploded a bit. In that they were celebrating every tackle and throw-in as if they'd won the league. And that causes massive emotional burnout. And I said it had happened by February, but it looks like it's happening already. Like, Arteta's coming out with Ten Hag excuses at this point. How are you feeling about this season so far? Obviously, we need to attack January quite aggressively and get some depth in there, be it left back, be it centre back, be another, as Carter mentioned, challenger for the likes of Gravenberch and McAllister and Jones in that CDM position. Are you in much of the same mind as myself, as talk to us in March? We're not going to we've been here before, like, we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. We know that all of a sudden City might go on a 10-game tear. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves at this point, like.
Yeah, I do still have a level of caution, but I also do have a lot of optimism at this point, even though it's so early in the season. I just think, sometimes when you're like a few points clear, but you've had a bit of luck along the way, and City, who City are. But I just think that this time we're so far clear, the best team in the league this season. That just fills me with a lot of confidence. Like I said, sometimes it can be quite close, and it's like there's such a long way to go. But I just think this year we're just so far ahead of everyone else so far. So if we can just keep this going, then I think it's ours to lose. Well, it's fair to say it's ours to lose. Obviously, we could lose it, but I think it is ours to lose. I did feel a great atmosphere in the ground Saturday, especially after City got beat. There was a real kind of sense of optimism in the ground, and you did kind of feel like something's kind of happening there. And there is kind of that similarity to 1920. Obviously, City lost Laporte, didn't they, early on in 1920? Yeah. And obviously this year they lost Rodri, and we saw that they couldn't cope without Laporte. And so far they can't cope without Rodri. So let's hope the similarities are kind of coming along there. And like you said, Arteta, don't know what's happened to him this season. They were playing great football last year, weren't they? But this year he's turned into the pile of Pulis. So I don't know what's going on with him. But yeah, let's see where we are at Christmas. I think we've got before Christmas, we've got City, haven't we? We've got Newcastle away, we've got Everton away, we've got Tottenham away. So I think if we come out of them games at Christmas and we're around the same gap that we've got now, or even 1 or 2 points less, then I'd be very, very confident that we can have a very strong second half of the season. Hopefully do something special. The only thing is if you do get an injury to Van Dijk or a Salah, that's obviously the concern. But I think the same could be said for any club, can't it, if they lose their best players? Yeah. So I am feeling something special brewing. As I said before, I just think we're so far and away the best team at the moment. So long may that continue, and yeah, let's hope for something special.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. There is something special brewing, but I think the fact that, to the point that I was making about Arsenal kind of losing the run of themselves, if you've noticed between ourselves and City, and you watched every game throughout the season so far, and you watched us, you watched City, and you watched Arsenal, the three out-and-out favourites, so to speak. Arsenal were celebrating every tackle, every throw, and every goal kick, every foul won, every decision as if they'd won the league. Whereas Liverpool and City, it's just robotic. It's just, right, that's that game done, off we go. That game done, off we go. That game done, off we go. And it's just, as Kobe said in his post-game interview one day, it was like, job's not done, let's keep going. Whereas it kind of, as to Carter's point of team cohesion, it shows that we have plenty of guys that have been there, done that, won the lot, and won Champions Leagues, Premier Leagues, everything. We know what it takes. The leadership group within the team know what it takes. Similarly with City, the leadership team there knows what it takes. It's a marathon and not a sprint, whereas Arsenal don't have that. They have nobody in that squad that's won anything major in the last 4 years, to my knowledge. Anyway, I'm sure they might have signed somebody that won something, but to the best of my knowledge, that club hasn't won anything in 4 years, and the last thing they did win wasn't even Mikel Arteta's team. It was Unai Emery's team that won that FA Cup. But it's an interesting one, because I do think that it could develop, but I'm not getting ahead of myself. I'm waiting until February or March. Like I do joke that myself and Matty are on the delusion train, and it's left the station and whatnot. We're winning everything, and that's pure confidence about everything at the same time. But you're also looking at it from a point of view of, we've seen City can go on a 15-game tear. Arsenal were able to do it last season, although they were in a terrible position before they ended up doing it. They seem to have fallen completely off the wagon this season. And as you mentioned, Tom, about injuries, if we get good injury luck, I think we're okay, really. And as well, not alone that, Alisson has been missing for 10 games, and we've not really missed him. And that's possibly, I say not missed him, it's not saying that Kelleher is better, but the fact that we haven't necessarily missed him, and we're still undefeated since that Palace game where Alisson went out, it kind of speaks volumes to Caoimhín Kelleher's quality as well at the same time. And on top of that as well, you've had Harvey Elliott's due to come back. Chiesa's hopefully due to come back. Diogo Jota's due to come back. Alisson was seen in training, and he had a little -1 beside an hourglass. So he's obviously due back very soon. I'm trying to think, is there anybody else that's injured currently at the moment? No, that's it. We've had very, very good injury luck so far, and as Tom mentions, touch wood, as long may it continue. It's definitely something special is brewing, and I genuinely think if we beat both Real Madrid and Manchester City over the next 3 weeks, I think heads will fall off. Genuinely, I think everybody's heads will fall off, and everybody's going to be on the delusion train at that point. And we're winning the league, we're winning the Champions League, we're winning the FA Cup, we're winning the EFL Cup. Wouldn't it just be hilarious that the first year Arne Slot arrives, he wins all 4 trophies in the one go, and we're just like, yeah, we're sound, good luck, we'll talk to you later, we've just completed football, we'll talk to you later, guys, enjoy. It'll be brilliant. Jamie I think he's more. I think public sector is more going on. Who? He's on about David Coote is exactly who he's on about. I'm not going to share what public sector has put up on the screen, but he's on about David Coote. That's possibly what he has ingested in that video to make him look and sound like that. But that's just not a doctor's opinion, but not speaking from experience either. I've never taken it, but yeah, you can usually tell by somebody that they're not in full capacity of their facilities, shall we say. But we're going to move on to the next topic, which includes some of the players coming back, some of the players currently out at the moment, and a little bit extra. So make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure you have your notifications on for all future streams and videos, so that you never miss out. We'll be back again live from 7:30 p.m. UK time. And this is what we're actually going to get into now. Any news on his injury? Hurt hamstring, not seen anything on it post-match. Essentially, it's a couple of weeks is what Paul Joyce has said. He hasn't been ruled out of Southampton, Man City, or Real Madrid after the international break. So essentially, that's what it is. There's nothing more than that. It's a little bit of a hamstring issue. He's going to spend the 2 weeks essentially at AXA and just train and rehab it, and then come back. He avoided any additional damage to it, is what Paul Joyce reported. Before, that's essentially it, realistically. But we'll get into that because there's a couple of players that are actually hanging about this international break. Carter, we have Van Dijk, who's gone, but the two notable ones that'll be hanging about that have contracts coming up is both Mohamed Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold. And Paul Joyce also then went and confirmed that talks are continuing for them. We also then have Ibrahima Konaté's talks, and we have Luis Diaz's talks as well. It seems like a bit of a perfect time to nail down a couple of players for another couple of years these 2 weeks, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I think I've sort of said this the whole time since sort of Slot and Hughes and stuff have come in, is none of these players we're going to sign probably until November, December at the earliest. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no way that especially older guys are going to commit their future when they haven't had any time under the manager, apart from Salah, who was there for most of pre-season. Like, these guys are going to want to know that they're going to have a chance at being successful, that one, the manager uses them the right way for them. Because you look at sort of Madrid and how Bellingham's used and all these things and how quickly sort of perceptions and everything can change. They want to make sure that they're being managed in the way they kind of want to be, at least. So I think these 2 weeks, they could be essential. And I think this is sort of the stage where teams really start planning like January and summer business. So it does make sense in this 2 weeks to try and hash out as much as possible. So we are kind of at like 80%, 90% sure if these guys are going to sign or not. Because I think by now we probably know. Like, nobody's going to say it, but Hughes and Slot know either they've got an indication if they're going to stay or not. Like, if Trent wants to leave, they probably know that he's going at this point. So I think this is a big week. And I think there are, as you said, there's a lot of things like maybe Diaz. Diaz is one who needs to get sorted as well soon. He's getting towards the end. So I think it is a big week, and it's good that Trent and Salah are here. But I think the earliest we'll hear is December, maybe early Jan. So I think it is big, and this whole time now is big. Like, if there's moves being made in January that are happening now, if Diaz and Konaté, they have contracts sort of shorter than other players. So I think constantly now this next sort of 6 to 12 months is really, really big for Hughes.
Yeah, it is. Jim Hughes, Fabrizio trying to make more Christmas money on Trent today. Yeah, Fabrizio Romano is somebody that makes all of his money off Twitter, so he's going to continuously say the same thing over and over again to get interactions out of it. You've seen it during the summer. You've seen it so far. He's literally said nothing new about Trent since the season started. He said Liverpool is the priority and Real Madrid's priority is Trent. He's not deviated from that since September, and that was over 2 months ago now at this point, or even August. Since the start of August, he said the same thing. It's just the way that it is. That's how he gets his money, and that's how he gets his engagement. So until he says something new, just ignore him. But you're obviously going to have all the Twitter bots and Twitter boys and tacticals and everything go around the place and sniff his farts, basically. Tom, how confident are you in the fact that we'll get at least 1 or 2 deals done during these next 2 weeks before our next game away to Southampton?
Not massively confident. I just think, we are good at keeping things under wraps, but I just think you will have heard a little something by now. There's just kind of no noise at all at the moment, is there? And I just think if something was likely to be near completion, I think you would have heard at least some kind of noise by now. So I'm not too confident of it getting done in the next 2 weeks. In terms of them getting done at all, I think it'll be 2 from the 3. I do think Salah will end up going, which I'd be gutted about, because you just can't replace him. Even if you spend 200 million, you just can't replace Mo Salah. Understand the age and stuff, but I think he's got 3 years at the top still. So for me, I think you've got to do everything to keep Mo Salah. Trent is a funny one. I think kind of the fan base are kind of uniting now, aren't they, in the fact that maybe we don't really need Trent that much.
Yeah, it's funny.
Especially with his attitude lately. I just think, I don't know, some of the things he said, the way he's kind of carrying himself on the pitch, I don't know, something just seems a bit off with him. And as I said in the chat, the way we're playing right now, it's not really getting the best out of Trent. So if you have Conor Bradley there, 5 years younger, better engine on him, better defensively, I'd say, it'd be a massive loss, don't get me wrong, but do we really, really need Trent? If them wages are going to keep Van Dijk and Salah, I'd take that sacrifice all day long. But yeah, obviously hope we can get Trent over the line as well. But if I was to not sign one, even given the age, it would be Trent, because there is that replacement there. And Bradley, he showed that last season how good he was last season. He was excellent when he played. And as I said, Van Dijk and Salah, you just can't replace even half of what they offer anywhere else. So for me, relatively confident in two of the 3 getting done. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting few months ahead.
Yeah, it really is. And as Carter mentioned, I think we'll end up seeing stuff happen in December. And people, the problem is, I think, and I think I mentioned this in the group chat as well, is that people are more annoyed at Trent and turning on Trent because he's silent and because he said nothing, as opposed to Salah and Van Dijk being quite open about the fact that they want to stay and said in no uncertain terms, I want to stay, pay me money, for lack of a better term. Whereas Trent basically came out and said, my contract's going to be done behind closed doors, the same as my last one and the one before that. You'll not hear anything until it's done. And I think the fact of not knowing and then seeing his performances and the kind of his attitude towards things, people are just losing their minds over it and losing the run of themselves. I don't think it helps at the moment that Trent hasn't, bagged like 10 assists so far this season, because it's hurting him in his negotiations that he's kind of looking replaceable. And Conor Bradley is there and obviously done so well. If we didn't have Conor Bradley, it'd be a feather in Trent's cap that he could push a little bit more. And if he was if he had 5 goals and 5 assists so far this season, he'd be able to walk into that negotiation room and drop that on the table and be like, look, this is what I'm able to do. Pay me or I'm gone. Whereas he's not really had much of the returns and he's being used as more of a bit of a traditional right back that just runs the channels. I think he rates him as he's one of on his day. Trent is one of the best passers of the ball at his feet in the world. He is one of the best creators in the world. His passing alone can unlock a team. There's nothing that says that Slot doesn't rate him, but it's the simple fact of the matter is that the way that the right back is being used in Slot system and the full back is being used in the Slot system is more traditional compared to his inversion into the midfield and his more quarterback role that he might have had under Jurgen Klopp. It's win by committee rather than win by sheer individual brilliance that was there under Klopp. Anil, how are you feeling in relation to the contract situation? Are you much of the same scenario as the 2 lads and Tom and Carter, that nothing's probably going to get done over the next 2 weeks, but this is a crucial time for us to get down some positive groundwork on these deals, both for Trent, Salah, Diaz and Konate, and also kind of work towards what we need in the January window? Because as Carter mentioned, if you don't know whether the player is going to stay or go at this point, you really have to start planning for January. And this is kind of where most of the groundwork would get done. How do you feel about the next 2 weeks? Do you see anyone getting announced, or are you expecting it to be later in the year and closer to the January time?
Yeah, much of the same to what the other lads are saying. So, obviously, I think having Salah and Trent there, it could help because they are present, so we can have conversations there, and it could smooth conversations along, get closer to a breakthrough. But the thing with all these contract things, none of us knows what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know how close things are, or how everything's going. All we can see is what the media are saying, so what Fabrizio Romano and all these lot are saying, and they're just saying the same shit again. That Liverpool are negotiating, Salah wants to stay, Van Dijk would be happy to stay. The same recycle information week in, week out. I do agree about Trent. I think he's obviously a world-class footballer, and to have him in the squad, we're blessed to have him. But at the same time, in the way we're playing now in the slot, I don't think he's as important as he was under Klopp. As in, like, to look at so far this season, the way Trent performance is, compare that to Salah and Van Dijk. Salah and Van Dijk are seen as two of our best players this season, along with 𝗗𝗘𝗦𝗣𝗥𝗔𝗧𝗘 and Gravenberch. So they're doing things to justify, to give me the extension, because they're putting good top performances in. Whereas Trent, he's been good in some games, he's been all right. He's nothing special, not been doing like anything like to get people talking. So can you really justify giving Trent the same kind of wages than Mo Salah or a Virgil van Dijk? Probably not. And it's a different situation in their careers, ain't it? So with Trent, he's probably looking at it as in like, is he 25, 26, 25? So he's thinking this is a massive time in his career. So if he takes this next like Liverpool contract, say for like another 5 years of his career, he didn't want to look back in regrets. Whereas Salah and Van Dijk, they're past 30, ain't they? So it's more like, they're happy where they are. And they want to stay. Where Trent, he want to make sure he didn't have regrets at the end of his career. So if he really want to win trophies, he didn't want to look back and think, I could have gone to Real Madrid and had more Champions Leagues or blah blah blah. But it all comes down to what Trent wants at the end of the day. Because he's saying different things. Like I've heard he say like to Eze that end of the day trophies ain't that important. So to stay at Liverpool then, be a fucking legend at the club. Do you know what I mean? He loved the club. Everybody loves him. So trophies ain't that important. It's much more important to win 2 Premier Leagues and a few cups at Liverpool than it is to win 3-4 Champions Leagues at Real Madrid. So I just hope if that's what Trent's saying, he needs to like not be a hypocrite and stand by what he's saying.
Exactly. Trent has been spouting the same stuff for a number of years where it means more and this is my club and I want to be a captain here and everything like that too. And to be honest with you, the way Van Dijk is at the moment, I don't see Trent getting the captain in the next 3 or 4 years if Van Dijk is still playing. The way that man leads this team, those players will go to war for Van Dijk. I can't say the same about Trent. And that's mad to say that he wants to be a Liverpool captain. And as you mentioned, he said conflicting things in it. He said, oh, well, trophies aren't everything at the end of the day. And then he turns around and says in another interview, oh, well, I don't want to be known as the guy that only won everything at a young age. And I'm like, okay, well, which fucking is it then? Like, are trophies important? Are they not important? Which one do you want? And as Derek mentions here, going to Madrid is the easy answer. It means more with us, apparently. But it does. That's essentially what he said. Like, it means more. And as Anil mentioned, like, are you okay with, like, winning a Premier League or a Carabao Cup or an FA Cup with us, and you could have a statue built outside of yourself? Similarly to what Klopp said to Coutinho before he decided he wanted to go to Barcelona. He was like, you can stay and they'll build a statue in your name, or you'll go and you'll just be another player. And he said he wants to win a Ballon d'Or. He's never winning one. He's just never winning one. And that's not because he's not good enough to win one. It's that he will never win one. It's just a right back will never win a Ballon d'Or. In the last 20 years, it's been either a Spanish team or a Spanish player that's won the Ballon d'Or. 99% of the time. The fact that Van Dijk didn't win it in that 2019, 2020 or whenever it was campaign, anybody that still takes the Ballon d'Or seriously needs their head checked. Personally, it's just the greatest popularity contest that I've ever seen. And it's, as we've seen, it's either a Spanish team or a Spanish player. Everybody thought that Vinny Jr. was going to win it. Nope, Spanish player. Even though it was a Spanish team, wasn't a Spanish player. Similarly with Ronaldo and Messi for so many years. It was just back and forth. And then eventually people were, Lewandowski should have won it. There was times the fact that Mo Salah hasn't won it, as Derek mentions here. And something that I mentioned that Tom laughed at in the group chat the other day. Imagine we let Mo Salah go on a free and he ends up winning the Ballon d'Or this time next year. I think the fume would be hilarious, to be honest with you. But I'd understand why you'd go as well at the same time. But we're going to move on to our last topic of the day. And I see a couple of questions there for public sector that I'm going to get into as well before we finish up. But before we do, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure you have your notifications on for all future streams and videos as well, so that you never miss out. The last topic, actually, speaking of Carter's mention of us getting groundwork down for January, is there's multiple Premier League clubs interested in Bournemouth, and also a team that Carter mentioned earlier, Bournemouth's left back, Milos Kerkez. So Liverpool, Man United and Chelsea are looking to spend about 50 million quid to sign him as Robertson's long-term successor. Now, Tom, we've seen Bournemouth, we've played against them, we obviously beat them quite early on in the season. Would this be somebody that you would have targeted yourself and would have been on your radar, or do you think this is a bit of a smokescreen and it's just paper talk and we're obviously not going to go for somebody completely out of left field, as Michael Edwards always does?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I know too much about him. Obviously, I think he's quite a young player, and I think he's got 21.
He's 20,
so,
21, yeah.
So, yeah, he's obviously got a lot to work with. Was it the Dutch league he played in last year, I think, wasn't it? So,
yeah.
Was it? Yeah. So, yeah, I don't really know too much about it, but I'd like to see us going for someone a bit better, to be honest. We're a club that's wants to challenge for leagues and Champions Leagues. I'm not sure this is someone that Man City go and sign, so I think if they wouldn't sign him, then why should we sign him?
Yeah.
Maybe as a backup option, he's all right. I don't know, Robertson, he is declining, but I still think he's one of the best left-backs around, even though he has declined. I still think he's one of the best, most rounded full-backs in Europe still. I still think, he's got a lot to give, even though he has fell off a bit. If we're going to go for someone in the Prem, probably would go for @Nouri, even though the defensive qualities are kind of a bit questionable. The attacking ability that he has. He's only 22, 23 as well. And he's been doing it for, a couple of years now on a poor side. I think if you're going to go for someone in the Prem, I think that's who I'd look to target. But yeah, wouldn't have too much interest in Kerkez, to be honest. I think you'd better have keeping Robbo, and then maybe, like I said, look at @Nouri in a year or two.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And Jamie's mentioned there that £50 million is very large for a player that's only 20 years old. And also he says, obviously, people are just connecting the Hughes dots that obviously ex-sporting director of Bournemouth, he'd obviously be very interested in he'd be very knowledgeable, at least, of the players that will be coming through and their tendencies and consistencies and everything there. 50 million seem like a bit of a large fee, or does that just seem to be the going rate for young players these days, considering what we've seen the likes of Elliot Anderson and others going for? Some are just gone at 40 million and 30 million and whatnot.
Yeah, I think I can understand the fee coming about, but I still think 50 million is a lot. I'd say about 30 to 40 would be more fair, because he is only 21. So if we do sign him, he could be potentially our left back for the next 10 years. And so far, from what I've seen of him, I like what I see. He's got a lot of energy, he's aggressive, he's good going forward, he can defend really well. I know you shouldn't judge a player international competition, but I thought in the Euros, I was watching Hungary because of Szoboszlai. I didn't think Szoboszlai was that good, but I thought then the Kerkez, Milos Kerkez, he stood out. I thought he was pretty, he had a lot of energy going forward, and I think he influenced the game really well. Whereas I think Szoboszlai, he probably disappointed me a bit. He wasn't as good as I thought he could be. Even though he did get an assist and he did try, but so based off that and based off that, and his performance against Man City, which was a top performance, I do like him, but I think you need more. You need more games. You need to see him after the rest of his season to see how he continues. Because it's still too early. I see Tom mentioned Ait-Nouri. I like him. I do. I just think defensively he's a bit like suspect. Like attacking wise, he's really good going forward. He can score goals. So, like he's probably better than a lot of left back going forward. But defensively, I've seen him like get out of position a lot, and I'm not too sure about him. But I think Kerkez are probably up for him rather than Ait-Nouri, just because how young he is, and just from what I've seen from him. So his qualities, I think, will suit us and how we play.
Yeah, there's a number of different players as well. I myself, Carrera from Benfica, 21-year-old, that is a former Man United player. That would be a good shout. Just personally myself, 6'1", he's a big dude. If Trent is to go up and bomb up the other end of the pitch, he can very easily fit in as a left centre back. He's got the size and the aerial ability. Jimmy's mentioning here that, let's remember, we wouldn't pay 60 million euros for Lenny Euro. There's a reason why, because he had barely played 60 games as a professional, whereas if Kerkez finishes out this season, I think that will be his second year in the Premier League, meaning he would have reached about nearly 80 games in the Premier League at that point. There's a big difference between not having even played 60 games in League One in France and having nearly 80 games under your belt in the Premier League. There's a major difference there. And as well, you're talking Premier League club to Premier League club, so they're obviously not going to, they're going to add on another 5, 6, 7 million for that alone. Carter, you mentioned about Bournemouth and obviously how they've really come together as a team. How do you view the Kerkez links? Do you think it's just us because Liverpool have Bournemouth's ex-sporting director, or do you think that there's any sort of weight to these rumours at all?
Well, I think he was definitely signed under Hughes. Like, he's definitely a Hughes signing. Like, this is his second year. He signed from AZ Alkmaar a bit before Slot was there. He was like always like a really sort of pushed as like a really promising player on like Twitter and stuff. And I think the box he ticks are that he's actually quite a decent like width and size, I think, and he's quite quick. So I think physically, for me, and I'm not gonna have a go at Tom for going to the games. I think Robertson gets a lot of love because he does a lot of good fan stuff. I think he always is gonna go up and he's always gonna give his all and look really hard and do a bit of like mindless running to kind of not make himself look good, but I don't think his overall level has been very good. Like, for his previous standard of the best left back in the world, I think it's really dropped off. Like, I now think there's maybe 6, 7, 8 left backs you'd pick over him in the league, like, to start. And I think Kerkez maybe isn't one yet because of his inconsistency, sort of sometimes, because he was in and out for Lloyd Kelly last year. I think Antonio Robertson's a bit too old. I think he'd be an interesting option. I don't think he's maybe good enough on the ball. I personally really like Lewis Hall. I think the fact he can sort of play a bit centre mid, play left back, he's comfortable sort of all over and around the pitch. And I think he one of his best games was for Chelsea was against City. I really like him. I do like Ait-Nouri. I think Ait-Nouri is a weird one. I think it's more of an application thing. Like, whenever we play him, he actually plays quite well and really physically against Salah. And I know Salah gets no calls, but I actually do look at those games and go, he clearly has the capacity to defend. Like, he's not, like, I think the position stuff is when you're at a really terrible Wolves team, sometimes people don't track back or people make mistakes. And I think that can be attributed to being in a bad team. But I think for me, to maybe free Trent a bit more up, the one I'd like to see us go for is Murillo. Like, whenever I've seen Forest play, which is very briefly, I think he can really carry the ball. I think he's good in the air for a fullback. So I think there's genuinely a lot of options out there. And I think Kerkez, I think he makes a lot of sense, but I think there will be a jump off point. Like, as if the price is 50, I think that's too high. Like, there's even Nuno Mendes, who I think is in the last 2 years, maybe, who he's someone who's been a wonder kid for like 5 years, who physically is like an absolute monster. So I think Kerkez makes sense, but I really think the price is going to determine what we come in for. And I think with the way Bournemouth are going, like, if they're not going to sell him for a cheap fee and annoy Iraola. Like, I think it's going to be 40, 45 million pounds. But I think the fact he's on £30,000 a week will maybe make us happy to pay a bigger fee. Because if we offered him 50, 60k a week, he'll probably accept that. And that's maybe half of what Nuno Mendes would want, or half of what someone at Newcastle or someone at Nottingham Forest would want. So I think it is interesting what we'll do at left back.
Yeah, similarly to the Luis Diaz deal, he was on pennies compared to what he was on at Liverpool, and all of a sudden he jumped at the 55k a week, whereas, as you said, he's on about 13k at the moment. And if we turn around and pay
30,000, so it's a bit, but 50 would be a big jump.
Yeah, but 30, even if you went 30 to 70 and you paid a bigger fee, all of a sudden this kid now is getting an extra 40 grand a week, like, and that's obviously that's most people's yearly salaries a week that he's getting extra, to put it into perspective. And as what seems to be not a lot of people are mentioning as well, Nick's is after mentioning it here, the 30 odd million that we'll get for Kelleher. I know, Carter, you don't think we'll get that much, but I think we will end up getting that much. It might not it'll be about 30 million personally. I don't think we'll get 35. I think that's a bit much, but with outgoings and salaries freeing up, we will have space to sort of start getting the team younger. Like, just to do the maths on it alone, I think I've said this a number of times. If we wanted to go and get Omar Marmoush and 𝗗𝗘𝗦𝗘𝗥𝗔𝗧𝗘, both of them together, we'd still have money left over from the money that we pay Salah on a yearly basis if we let him go. And some people don't believe that either, which is the mad thing about it. And all of a sudden now you've gotten a right winger that's 10 years younger and a striker that's just scoring and assisting for fun these days. Now, I think that Omar Marmoush is just too good to be true. The more he starts scoring and the more he's assisting and the more he's returning, I think it's just too good to be true. And he'll just flop at the net when he gets a big move now going. I've gotten to the point now where it's like, okay, there's been no drop off. This kid's clearly just having a fire season. Needs to do it for multiple seasons. We've seen it with Anthony Gordon last season. Had a great season, done loads, and he's done absolutely nothing this season. You need to continuously do it. Just going to get into a couple of questions that are here from people. Public sector. What bothers me is he'll get suspended or whatever. What about Liverpool? Where's our justice? Potentially lost titles. This is obviously in relation to David Coote and his video that came out. If I was FSG, I'd be suing the shite out of the Premier League. The agenda and corruption is clear. I don't necessarily think it's the Premier League that's at fault here. It's the PGMOL, who's an independent body in comparison to them. But they're waiting until the PGMOL have done their investigation beforehand. But what I think might happen here is because of lost winnings, there may end up just being a settlement out of court. And it might just be the PGMOL end up paying Liverpool. What have they just put out about David Coote? Well, that's the third. That's pretty funny. If anybody's seen the tweet, that's actually very funny. I'll see if I can get it up here. I'll see if I can share it, because that is actually quite funny. Give me 1 second. I'm going to get it up here, because that's genuinely very, very funny that Sevilla have put this up. Right, we're going to take the brand off. We're going to show it here on second. Now we're going to go present, and we're going to go share screen, and I'm going to go to Twitter, because this is actually quite funny. Share this. I found this very funny. Hopefully the video loads. Oh God, would you love a bit of banter thrown at them? And to be fair, that's just funny. I'm not gonna lie. There's no poor taste around that. That's genuinely funny. I don't care what you say. But we are going to leave it there, guys, for today. We've had a great stream. There's over 6,000 people watching across YouTube and Twitter at the moment. If you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you're watching over on Twitter at the moment, or X as it's known now, jump over to our YouTube channel. The link is in our bio. And just leave a like and subscribe and have a watch of the couple of the videos that we have there. We hope you enjoy. We'll be back again tomorrow from 7:30 p.m. UK time. We'll also have our Star Stripes and Anfield night stream from 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2 a.m. UK time. So make sure you're around for that as well. But from myself, Carter, Anil, and Tom, thank you guys so much for joining us on this Monday evening. Hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day wherever you are, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow. Bye-bye.